Part 154. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1531. Manbao ignored him, turned his head and asked Bai Shan, "Are you going too?" Bai Shan nodded, "Go, I heard that there are a lot of lotus and lotus pods in Hyogyo Temple at the moment, and the fresh lotus seeds are delicious too." Manbao immediately said, "I'll go too." He immediately forgot the medical books and notes in the system. The three of them also invited Lu Huan and Yin Or, who were on the side. Yin Or nodded in agreement. Lu Huan may not have been out to play for a long time, and he couldn't think of it, so he nodded again and again. The three parties made an appointment to meet at the gate of the palace and separated, and each went home first. Manbao hurried back to the main courtyard with a basket, stuffed the 3 wooden jars he brought out onto the duobao stand, turned around and ran out. He was grabbed by the 4th sister-in-law, who came back from working in the garden, and she asked, "Why do you have to run outside just after you come back?" Manbao said, "My friend and I made an appointment to swim in the lake." Mr. Fang looked up at the sun. It was still early in the morning, but the sun had already started to heat up, and she knew how venomous it would be in a while. Mrs. Fang stared at Manbao's white and tender face, and she was reluctant to go out to get a tan, so she said, "Put on a hat. By the way, I see that the girls outside seem to wear hats with gauze when they go out. They are still very pretty and can provide shade, so you can also buy one and wear it." But there was none at home at this time, so Mr. Fang put the bamboo hat he often wore on Manbao's head. Manbao didn't dislike it either, and ran to Bai Shan and Bai Erlang wearing a hat. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang saw it and were envious. "If there are any more, we will also have one." Zheng Shi on the side, looking at his son's jade-like face, and then looking at the hat on Manbao's head, Zheng opened his mouth and said weakly, "If you don't like the sun, don't go out, right?" Bai Shan immediately said, "We are not afraid of the sun." Zheng. He said that he was not afraid, but his body was still very honest, and went to the yard of Shiro and the others to find a hat. Mrs. Fang and the others really had them, so they brought them 2 new ones, and said with a smile, "This place has more sunshine and less rain than our Lujiang County. We've been here for so long, and it's raining too in the summer." It was raining, and when I asked the locals, they said it was normal. So we bought a few more bamboo hats, thinking that it would be useful even for working in the yard. Unexpectedly, they didn't have time to use it yet. Bai Shan and the others used it first. The bucket hats Bai Shan and Bai Erlang are also familiar with each other, and they can fasten and tie their heads without any help, and ask, "Where are Lixu and them?" Going to the bookstore, Fang said with a smile, "The characters they wrote now are finally approved by the bookstore's shopkeeper, so I picked up the book from the bookstore and copied it back. Today, they are going on a business trip together. Don't look at their family living in this big mansion now, but Wu Zhoulang, who was spending money, didn't hide it from them. After all, he had to leave the public school." After Mrs. Fang's health got better, she discussed with Mrs. Lu, and she still cooked and eaten in the yard by herself. Of course, Zhou Lixu would join them. Anyway, this house is big enough, and it is a single family as soon as the courtyard gate is closed, which is no different from those who lived in different homes in the countryside. As for Manbao, she is at ease. Anyway, she only goes home for 2 days every 10 days. If she dislikes the dishes made by Fang and the others, she will turn around and eat with Bai Shan and the others. If you want to eat the dishes made by Fang and the others, you can eat them here, no one is forcing her. Because he buys rice, buys vegetables, and cooks his own food, the old Zhou family knows about how much they spend each month. And no matter how big the house they live in, their current income is out of Manbao's salary, and the family really only has a fixed income from restaurants. As for Thursday, don't think about it for the time being. No matter how much money he earns, he can put most of it in when he turns around, and most of the money he makes can't be used for them. The remaining half is in Zhou Lijun's hands. It is reserved for his hometown and cannot be easily used. Next time he goes home, he will bring it back to his parents. So Zhou Lixu and the others also began to practice calligraphy seriously, putting away a lot of impatience, and they were able to copy some simple books. The money earned from a book is not much, but it is enough for the pen and ink they usually study, so Wu Lang has another expense. Even Mr. Fang and Mrs. Lu collected horse manure and composted flowers in a corner of the garden according to the gardener's method, and then planted vegetables in the yard where they lived, and also planted some vegetables in the garden. Vegetables grow fast in summer. It's only been a month, and some vegetables can be supplied at home without having to go out to buy them. Even Mrs. Lu was very interested to experience it for 2 days. Speaking of copying books to make money, Man Bao just remembered, yeah, today is the first day of the 6th lunar month, shouldn't I get a salary? Bai Shan, is the Ministry of Household resting today too? Man Bao did the math and got angry, when I take a bath, they also take a bath, but when they go to work, I go to the palace, how can I get my salary? Zheng Shi, who was on the side, listened with amusement, and said happily, what a stupid child, where do you need to go to get the salary? She received a salary for Bai Qi, so she knew how to do it. She recalled with some nostalgia, you have to go to the Ministry of Household for a time, and hand in a copy of your doorpost and your seal to them. Later, people in your family will bring the doorpost with the seal to the door. You can get your salary back when you go, you don't need to go there yourself. Man Bao was relieved at this time, and after thinking about it, he said, I will take a leave of absence to go to the household department on the 3rd day of junior high. I don't know if I should make an appointment in advance. I have to tell Lu Huan later and let him go back to Lu Shangshu in the evening. Send me a word, you can wait for me on the 3rd day of junior high. Lu Huan didn't expect that he still has this role, and when he received this task, he was stunned. But after being stunned for a while, I felt that this was not a big deal, so I nodded, okay, let me tell my grandfather, when are you going to go to the Ministry of Household? After thinking about it, Man Bao said, it's around the time of application for the 3rd day of the 1st year. I should be back from Daming Palace at that time, and I'll just take an hour's leave from Chongguan Museum. Bai Shan found the lotus seeds he wanted to buy, and while squatting to choose, he said, it's not difficult, just ask your grandfather to let the clerks wait for a while. How about these few? Isn't the sun quite big? Man Bao also squatted down to look, stretched out his hand to take the lotus pod he handed over, pinched the few next to him and felt quite full, then nodded. Bai Shan asked the hawker, how do you sell this? The hawker smiled and said, 10 cents apiece. Bai Shan said, it's really expensive. It's 4 cents more expensive than what we bought in Yazhu City. The hawker said proudly, son, this is the capital, and the things here are more expensive than those outside. Bai Erlang picked them up a bit, and also picked 3 of them, and stuffed them into Bai Shan for him to settle the bill. It's agreed that you will treat yourself. Bai Shan took out a bunch of money from his wallet. Since it happened to be 100 pennies, he didn't want to open it, so he turned to Yin or Lu Huan and said, you also choose one. See you tomorrow, duck. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1532. Yin Orzhen was uncomfortably pulling the hat on his head, which Man Bao brought to them, because she felt that even they needed to wear a hat to prevent dizziness, and Yin needed it even more. So he brought out the 2 remaining bamboo hats from the family, and after meeting with Yin or Lu Huan at the intersection, he gave them to them. They put them on when they got out of the car, because Zhou Man and Bai Shan and Bai Erlang both wore them, and Lu Huan didn't feel anything when they put them on. But Yin or was not used to it. The main reason was that the hat was a bit big, and it covered his eyes when he put it on his head. Hearing Bai Shan's words, he lowered his head and glanced at the pile of lotus pods on the ground, and chose the one that looked the largest and handed it to Man Bao. Man Bao hugged them together, while Lu Huan picked them carefully, but he didn't know why he chose one in the end. Bai Shan paid the money together. The hawker is still quite clever, at least there is no problem with counting. The capital is not like Lujian County, if the money is not clear, it will not be counted. When the silver and the goods were finished, Bai Shan took the lotus pods from Man Bao and gave them to them, and took the two he had chosen. Let's go charter a boat. Bai Renke, Chiao Tao and the others are here. Where? While peeling the lotus seeds, Bai Erlang raised his head and turned around and said, I don't know, just walk along the lake, and you will find it. After agreeing to meet at the lake at the time, it has already passed. They are probably already on board. Bai Shan didn't look for it anymore. Seeing that there were a lot of people, he reached out and pulled Man Bao to avoid it first, and then pulled Man Bao over after the wave of people passed. Yin He, holding the lotus pod in one hand and the bucket hat in the other, followed them with difficulty. Chang Xiao, who had parked the car to catch up, saw it, and quickly stepped forward to help him get the lotus seeds and protect him. After walking for a while, before finding any of Renke, Bai Shan said, no more, let's rent a boat first. Man Bao nodded again and again, glanced at several idle boats on the shore, and pointed to a boat that looked more pleasing to the eye, let this one. Daji, who also followed up, came forward to rent a boat. The two quickly negotiated a price, and everyone boarded the boat. This boat is for wealthy tourists. The cabin is well furnished. There is a fixed table with a tea set on it. There is a tea stove in the corner of the cabin to make tea. The boatman has also received many ladies and gentlemen, and he was a little stunned when he suddenly saw the 5 people wearing bucket hats. His eyes swept across the hats on their heads, then at the clothes and accessories on their bodies, and then at Chang Xiao, who was standing beside him without a hat, raising his hands to wipe the sweat and waiting for his servants. Bent over to let them on board. Then, like other rich ladies and gentlemen, I recommended the tea on their boat. After successfully selling a pot of tea, they propped the boat out of the shallow water and slid into the lake. The boat slowly drifted towards the center of the lake, and Man Bao took off the bamboo hat on his head, feeling that his hair was a little loose, so he stretched out his hand and pulled it. Bai Shan couldn't see it, so he stretched out his hand to help her sort it out. Lu Huan also felt that his eyes hurt, so he turned his head to the side with Bai Erlang, and took off the bamboo hat on his head and threw it aside. Yin Orke was really relieved. He handed the bamboo hat to Chang Xiao, and found a place in the cabin to sit down. He turned his head and told Chang Xiao, go and make tea. He took the lotus seeds from his hand, but he didn't know how to peel them for a while. He couldn't help but look at Bai Shan and Man Bao, who were opposite. Man Bao and Bai Shan had already peeled off the lotus seeds, and then peeled off the lotus flesh. Sweet and bitter, it is still delicious, and the fragrance of lotus seeds is refreshing. Seeing Yin Or looking at them, but there was no movement in his hands, Man Bao couldn't help but ask, you can't eat lotus seeds, right? Yin Or embarrassedly said, I'm not in good health, my family never gives me these things, and my family won't eat them in front of me. When several people heard it, they immediately looked at him with sympathy, and by the way, sympathized with his family, especially the 3 sisters who were about the same age as him. I don't know if they have eaten lotus seeds. Bai Shan said, put out the lotus seeds first. Yin He just followed their example and peeled a hole, but found that the lotus seeds inside were very small. Even Bai turned his head back and looked at him sympathetically. Bai Shan stretched out his hand to take the lotus pod in his hand, pinched it with his hand, and finally found that the lotus pod was quite large, but nearly 1/3 of it was empty or very small and almost inedible lotus seeds, and 1/3 is small, and the remaining third is of different sizes, but within the normal range. Bai Shan put the few fruitful lotus seeds in his palm, and said with a smirk, eat it. Bai Erlang put the lotus seed in his hand into his mouth, and sympathetically chose one of his 3 large lotus pods for him. "Nyo, give it to you." Yin-or thanked him and looked at the lotus seeds peeled from the hands of the 4 of them, and found that Bai Shan and the others had chosen the best lotus pod. He couldn't help but wonder, how did you choose? The 3 of them have never learned, but it's all based on experience and feeling. Man Bao said, we have picked a lot of lotus pods. Bai Shan misses it a little, that lotus pod is very delicious. Bai Erlang pointed out the reason, isn't the big and many lotus pods delicious? Lu Huan asked curiously, why is it for nothing? Bai Shan rushed in front of Bai Erlang and said reservedly, because it's ownerless, anyone who sees it can pick it up naturally, so it's free. Then the lotus pond is actually wild. Lu Huan was refreshed and said, it's said that there are many lotus flowers in the south of the Yangtze River. I know that there are many wild lotus ponds in some water towns. I didn't expect you to have them in Lujiang County. Man Bao said, the place where we pick lotus pods is not in Lujiang County, but in Yizhu City. Lu Huan exclaimed, Yizhu City is so good, how could there be such a place? At this moment, Bai Erlang finally reached a consensus with the 2 of them, and the 3 nodded together, isn't it? Okay, not only the lotus pond is ownerless, but many flowers and plants are also ownerless, haha. Haha. Seeing that they were successful, Lu Huan also yearned for it. Bai Shan's laughter was too loud and cheerful, and soon attracted the attention of other boats in the lake that were close to them. A boat walking not far in front of them got out ahead and shouted in their direction, Bai Shan, Bai Chang, is that you? Bai Chang sat close to the hatch, and immediately stuck his head out, seeing him cry out happily, Chiao Tao, I finally found you. Why didn't you wait for us to board the boat? It made us have a hard time looking for it. Several people on the boat, I didn't even bother to look for it. The 3 of Man Bao, picking lotus pods is also a skill, and opening your eyes is also a nonsense. Next update around 4 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1533. But no one broke this reality. The people in the cabin on the opposite side were slightly apologetic and shouted and replied, we have waited for you for a long time, thinking that it will take time for you to leave the palace, and you have to go home again, so you may not be in time. There are too many people, and the boat just happens to be free, so we will get on the boat and wait for you first. The 2 boats slowly merged together, because the boats were not very big, and the boatmen also slowed down, shaking their oars wave after wave, even if they bumped into each other. They charge by the hour and are in no hurry to urge the distinguished guests to leave, wishing they had been on the boat all day. The 2 sides looked at each other smoothly across the lake. There were not only Chiao Tao and a few Taixio students on the boat, but also Peng Zhiru and Lu Xiaofo, who were the same group of Anian students who entered the Quazijian. Bai Shan didn't expect to meet the 2 of them here, so he asked curiously, did you make an appointment to play together? Peng Zhiru smiled and said, yes, next month is the ghost month, we want to light a lamp for our ancestors in the Hyogyo temple, but we don't know the procedure, so we thought about going out for a lake tour today and going to the Hyogyo temple to ask. In fact, it is asking for the price. After all, next month is the ghost month. Not only do you need to make an appointment in advance to light the lantern, but the price has also risen. Life in Beijing is too difficult, and they have to plan it. Man Bao couldn't help but looked at Bai Shan and asked, is the ever-bright lamp at Hyogyo temple okay? I heard that it's good, Renke rarely said. After all, it is a national temple. Even the emperor and the queen believe in Hyogyo temple. Man Bao thought about the emperor's attitude of worshipping Buddha, that is not a believer at all, it is just a prayer for a dead horse as a living horse doctor. So she moved Hyogyo Temple back in an instant and lined up behind Suan-Dugwan. Bai Shan was more straightforward, turned his head and asked Man Bao, do you think they would like to light the lantern or do things? This is for Man Bao to ask Uncle Joe. He felt that he was really too witty, and he didn't have any troubles with Ren Ke Chiao Tao and the others. Just ask Man Bao directly which one the ancestors liked. He felt that his father and Uncle Joe should be considered confidants, so if Uncle Joe liked it, his father should also like it. Man Bao was silent for a while, and he could only bite the bullet and ask Keek in his heart, do you think my father would like to do things, or would he like to light an ever-bright lamp? Coco. If it weren't for the fact that its host is still the object of the main system's attention, it would definitely not be able to resist talking back. As a system, it cannot have a subjective understanding, so after being silent for a while, seeing that Man Bao seemed to have been waiting for it to answer, it said, according to the host's preference, your father may like to do things. This answer made Man Bao silent for a while, and then she said to Bai Shan without changing her face, they may like to go to Taoist temples. Bai Shan nodded, then let's go to Suan-Du temple to do things. Renke listened and was curious, is Suan-Dugwan's ritual done well? Bai Shan said very pertinently, last year, our two families did it in Suan-Dugwan, and it felt pretty good. Renke hesitated, then let's go to Suan-Du temple and ask. They don't believe in Buddhism, of course, they don't believe in it either. They just want to have a sustenance. Maybe their ancestors can receive their thoughts? Therefore, they believe in their hearts that whether it is an ever-bright lamp or a practice, the ancestors can receive it, it is just a matter of how much. And this amount depends on the Taoism and sincerity of the monks and Taoists. Therefore, they are easily persuaded. Not to mention the young Renke, even the old Pengzhiru and Lu Xiaofo hesitated, and then said, why don't you ask both sides? Anyway, there is still a month before next month, and if you choose to do things in a month and a half, there is still a month and a half. Bai Shan didn't plan to spend this time, you go to Hyogyo temple, and we'll go to Suan-Du temple. Didn't we exchange famous posts with the above-mentioned Taoist masters Hicksing? Man Bao nodded. Pengzhiru said, then you can ask more carefully, and we will ask you later. Suan-Dugwan is not near, they don't want to make this trip. After everyone was loyal and martyr, they all entered the Imperial College in the same group, and they still had a very common position and language. They felt that this kind of thing could come together. Bai Shan and Man Bao also had no opinion. After discussing important matters, Pengzhiru's eyes fell on the lotus pods in their hands, and asked with a smile, why did you still buy lotus pods? Then reach out to them. Bai Shan had most of the uneaten left in his hand, and he was reluctant, so he turned to look at Bai Erlang. Bai Erlang only had one left in his hand, and he peeled off two more. He didn't give up and turned to look at Lu Huan and Yin Or. Thinking that they had only one, he looked past them and looked at Man Bao. One of the three in Man Bao's hand had already been peeled off. She hesitated for a while, then reached out and picked a smaller one and handed it over. Pengzhiru reached out to take it and handed it to the friends. Everyone peeled it out one by one and asked, where did you buy it? It's quite sweet. Man Bao pointed to the shore and said, there are many. A group of young scholars really hadn't paid attention to the things on the stalls on the shore, and they felt a little bit regretful. After eating the lotus seeds, Pengzhiru and Lu Xiaofo were still a little unsure, so they said, why don't we go ashore and buy some lotus pods? The boatman immediately said, young master, we know whose lotus pod is the best, shall we roll the boat over? Lu Xiaofo nodded, glanced at the sun that was about to rise in the sky and said, shake it over, we'll get on the boat in a while, and go to Hyogyo temple after a while. The sun is too hot right now. Man Bao and the others came to Hyogyo temple today to eat lotus pods and swim in the lake. Naturally, they also went with them, and it was almost time for lunch, so they could drop by and buy some food and take them on board. The restaurants nearby are very good at doing business. Knowing that there are many nobles on the lake at this time, not only did they cooperate with the boatmen to recommend meals, but they also specially sent their own guys to the lake to announce the menu loudly while walking along the shore. Manbao and the others just came to the side of the boat, and before they could see the lotus pods on the shore, they heard everyone shouting from a distance, braised chicken with fresh mushrooms, roasted leg of lamb, roasted steamed chicken. When Manbao heard this, he immediately waved to the guy and shouted, braised chicken with fresh mushrooms. The guy heard it with sharp ears, and immediately turned his head to look at the sound, ran to the side, stood on the bank with a smile and bowed and asked, does the little lady want to eat fresh mushroom stewed chicken? Manbao asked, where did your fresh mushrooms come from? It's all picked from the mountains, the man said. This is the last wave of wild mushrooms. It's been hot these days. After a while, the mushrooms should all stop growing. The little lady is really smart, so I won't eat it now. Fresh mushrooms, we will have to wait until next year to eat them. Manbao turned to look at his friends and asked, do you eat? Bai Shan and Bai Erlang nodded immediately, then stared at Lu Huan and Yin Or. Yin was not very good at eating meat, and Lu Huan wanted to eat roast leg of lamb, but seeing them staring at them, he could only reluctantly nodded, okay. See you at 8 p.m. I will try to make it better. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1534. Since they met Renkei, they naturally ate together. So everyone negotiated and ordered the menu, and then let the boy run back quickly to inform the restaurant. Manbao then went to see the lotus pods they bought. Different from their careful selection, the young masters who didn't go shopping directly bought a large handful with a big wave of their hands, and gave them half of it very generously. This made the three people who seemed reluctant to part with them just now feel embarrassed, so they took the initiative to ask the servants and entourage to go to the boat over there. Daji didn't worry about them at the moment, and the two boats were not far apart, so he went to Rank's boat with Chang Shao and others. Peng's Hero and the others moved over and sat down to eat lotus seeds peeled in pairs. He and Lu Xiaofo and Bai Shanzoumen were better acquainted, so they asked, how about studying in Chongguan Museum? Bai Shan said, not bad, that is, I can see Confucius offering wine every day. When Peng's Hero and the others put themselves in their shoes, they were a little envious, but also sympathized with them. The speed of the restaurant is not slow, and the food was delivered at noon. The young man was very clever, and he directly remembered the boatman's boat when he left, so when he came with someone carrying 3 large food boxes, he stood up on tiptoe. I looked into the lake with my toes, and soon found someone. The boatman was also very attentive. They were familiar with the guys in these restaurants. As soon as he waved his hand, the boatman rocked the boat and passed by. Daji, Chang Shao and others jumped to the shore, carried the food box into the cabin, opened the food box, put the meals on the table one by one, and then retreated. The boat swayed quietly into the deep lake again, and the breeze blew again, and the water vapor was blown into the cabin. Even though the sun was blazing outside, they couldn't feel the heat, they just felt comfortable. Especially, at this time, there are many tourists around the lake, and the shouts of the vendors are heard loud and low, which is more interesting than swimming in the lake in the palace. Bai Shan looked at the shore quietly for a while, and couldn't help sighing, is this a prosperous world? Manbao and others also turned their heads to see the shore, and couldn't help but smile, it's much better than what the gentleman said more than 10 years ago. You must know that when you ascended the throne today, it was still in troubled times. Don't look at the fact that the first emperor had established the country for several years, but at that time, all parts of the country had not completely settled down. When he ascended the throne today, the leader of the Hu people in the north led his troops directly to the outside of the capital. In the end, it was only when His Majesty drove out of the city to stop the fighting, but in the past 10 years, there have been occasional wars in various places. However, most of them were unfavorable rebellions and border wars. For the people of the Central Plains, the past 10 years have been peaceful, and His Majesty has tried his best to be light-hearted. At first glance, it is indeed a prosperous world. Bai Shan knows that this country still has many shortcomings, but if this kind of peace can be maintained, the people will always be able to make life better. The life of ordinary people is better, and their life will be much better. If nothing else, at least in the summer, there will be no shortage of lotus pods to eat, and at the same time, there will be no shortage of lotus flowers to enjoy. There are delicacies in different seasons, which are good and cheap. Only then can it really be considered a prosperous world. Bai Shan thought in his heart, his eyes glowed, and his whole body brightened a lot. Man Bao turned his head to look at him, and met the line of sight he was looking at. The two of them couldn't help but smile, their eyes seemed to be full of stars. It was the first time for Pengzhiru, Lu Xiaofo, and the others who were sitting across from them to look at each other and smile like this. For some reason, they suddenly felt a little sour in their hearts. After all, they were a little older than Bai Shan. Even Yin He, who knew their friendship like this, couldn't help being taken aback for a moment, looked up at them inexplicably, wondering what happened to them. Only Bai Erlang, who was sitting on the side, was not surprised. While they were smiling at each other, he stretched out his chopsticks and took over the chicken legs that Bai Shan had just picked up. The chicken stewed with fresh mushrooms was very fragrant, and even the chicken legs had a delicate fragrance. And how delicious the chicken legs are! When Bai Shan returned to his senses, lowered his head and picked up the chopsticks, just as he was about to continue eating, he felt that something was not right, and he couldn't help turning his head to look at Bai Erlang who was beside him. Bai Erlang had already eaten the chicken leg. Seeing him looking over, he raised his eyebrows and turned the chicken leg back. "You eat?" Bai Shan was too disgusted. "You can eat it yourself." The group ate dinner, the boat swayed to the center of the lake, and they drank tea and chatted freely. Man Bao simply sat on the deck wearing a bamboo hat, removed his shoes and socks, and put them directly into the lake. Seeing inside, Ren Ke almost sprayed the tea, and quickly looked away. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang didn't think there was anything wrong with this, and asked Man Bao, "Are you comfortable?" Man Bao nodded, so the two also walked out of the cabin and took off their shoes and socks to soak their feet. Not to mention, the lake water is clear and cool, which is really comfortable. Bai Shan stroked the water with his feet and said regretfully, "I don't know how the lake mud is. If only it were as delicate as the mud from the river in the village. That way you can step on and play, and it's very fun." Bai Erlang asked, "Didn't you fall into the lake? Didn't you reach the bottom of the lake?" This is really not a good memory. Man Bao and Bai Shan put their feet away at the same time and stopped soaking their feet. Bai Erlang left when he saw that they disagreed, and his eyes widened and turned to look at Lu Huan, who was just curious and wanted to soak his feet. "What did I say wrong?" Lu Huan knew that Bai Erlang was talking about their assassination by the lake last year, when Bai Shan and Zhou Man fell into the lake. This is really not a happy thing, so he said, "You shouldn't mention this, it's not a happy thing to fall into the lake." Bai Erlang didn't think so. He frowned and said, "Falling into the lake is not a happy thing, but something worth showing off. How could they be unhappy?" Based on what he knew about the two little friends, they should be proud of themselves. Bai Shan and Man Bao put on their shoes and socks and went back, secretly saying, "Two people drowned in this lake, so they don't soak their feet anymore. If it weren't for the fact that they killed two people, it would be a happy thing to fall into the lake and emerge safely." The two went back to the cabin and sat down. Pengzhiru stared at the hats on their heads. Bai Shan took off the hats and asked, "What's wrong?" Pengzhiru asked hesitantly, "It's not raining, why are you wearing this?" In his impression, This is something you only wear when it rains, right? Man Bao said, "Do hats can also be shaded, why, haven't you seen them?" Peng's hero turned back and asked Lu Xiaofo a few people not too confidently, "You covered the sun with a bamboo hat?" Several people shook their heads together. "Is the sun still covered?" Man Bao was surprised. He didn't expect them to be rougher than the common people. Wouldn't they even block the sun? Yin He, who had been entangled with the bamboo hat for a long time, interjected at this time, "The sun is too big, they can choose not to go out, or they can take a carriage, or they can wear a hat. Who would use a bamboo hat to block the sun?" Now it was Man Bao and Bai Shan's turn to be suspicious, and hesitantly asked, "Do men also wear hoods?" Peng's hero and others, "What do you think about men?" Man Bao and Bai Shan turned their heads to look at the distant shore together, squinting for a long time and couldn't see which man was wearing a cap. Yin Or sighed, "The sun is still normal at the moment, you should be able to see it after a while. However, no one is a person who seeks a living in the fields. They can take a carriage to go in and out. Who will wear a hat? Only children who walk outside for a long time will wear it. It's the end of the month, and there are children's shoes with monthly passes to take a look at the full treasure." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1535. Man Bao said earnestly, "You are weak, why don't you wear a hat when you go out?" Yin He said, "In this weather, I never stay outside for a long time." In the past, Yin, or not to mention going out to play in the summer, even if he walked from this yard to that yard, the servants had to stop him, making him wait for the heat to dissipate before going out, and he mostly walked under the corridor. The next person will hold an umbrella, and you will never travel under the sun. Okay, everyone exchanged information that they didn't know about each other. However, the items cannot be communicated with each other. When the time is about, the boatman will roll the boat back. The guy waiting on the shore stepped forward to pack the food box and settle the meal payment along the way. Everyone is also very simple. According to the head, each person contributes a share of money, and then they have to go their own way after the boat is evenly divided. Man Bao and the others put on their bamboo hats, and looked at Lu Xiaofo and the others who were blushing after a while and said, "You should wear a bamboo hat next time you go out, or you can wear a curtain cap." Lu Xiaofo glanced at the hats on their heads, and then at the clothes that did not match the hats, and decided to go out less. Bai Shan and the others shook their hands and left, while Lu Xiaofo and the others turned around and went to Huguo Temple to inquire about the news. Before leaving, the two sides also agreed to communicate with each other when they met in the latter half of the year, whether to choose Huguo Temple or Suandugwan. Bai Shan responded, and when he got home, he asked his grandmother to talk about it, and asked his grandmother to send someone to the Suandu temple to inquire. He said, "Originally, I thought that it would be fine to burn some paper money at home to worship at the ghost festival as in previous years, but Lu Xiaofo and the others who were alone in the capital all wanted to light up the lanterns for their ancestors. Our whole family is here, and it's better to do it ceremoniously." Mrs. Lu thought for a while and then said, "All right, I'll send someone to inquire. Since I went to Suandu temple, I'll go to Huguo temple again." She smiled and said, "You children are tender-skinned, and those who know and do, monks and Taoists who know and do, say that they will fool you. Don't think that monks don't lie. When monks do lie, no one can compare." After thinking about what Dao and Daoxia should learn every day, Bai Shan nodded in agreement. Madame Lu asked about Man Bao's salary and asked with a smile, "Is her post ready?" Bai Shan paused, scratched his head and said, "She hasn't done it, and neither will her brothers and sisters. The previous posts were written by the husband himself." Mrs. Lu smiled and said, "Posts sent to the Ministry of Households should be kept on file, and those who go to receive stipends in the future will also need to check their seals, so postings can't be shabby." She reached out and took 2 gold-filled posts on the case and handed them over to Bai Shan. She smiled and said, "Please ask Mr. Zhuang to write these 2 posts in person. Just ask Man Bao to put his seal on it." Bai Shan opened it and saw that the words inside were neat and powerful, and the paper used was high-quality hard paper, some of which were shiny, probably sprinkled with copper foil. Bai Shan accepted the post and asked, "Grandma, when I get my salary?" Mrs. Lu said happily, "I will make you a copy as it is." Only then did Bai Shan feel satisfied, and took the post to find Man Bao. Man Bao was also very surprised when he saw the post, and he touched it for a while. "Why do you want to post such a good post?" "Bai Shandao, this is a matter of face. Since your grandmother made it for you, then you can hand it over. You don't need to keep the post, it will be ashes." Man Bao thought about it too, but he was still very reluctant to see such a beautiful post. She was still reluctant to part with it, and Wu Lang and the others were even more reluctant to part. "Is this glittering gold foil? The cover is, the inside is copper." Friday Lang smacked his tongue. "This post must be very expensive. Since it is handed in as a token, isn't it just a random post? Why do you do such a good job?" Mrs. Fang also reached out and touched it gently, and said softly, "Mrs. Lu is too polite." But he still said, "But since you have done it, you must use it. This is also for the sake of my sister-in-law. I can't use ordinary posts when my sister-in-law is a high-ranking official. I will be embarrassed to meet my colleagues in the future." Man Bao said, "I won't be embarrassed, being an official is based on ability." "That's right, but you can't make people look down on my aunt," Fang said. "It's okay if you don't have it. Since you have it, you still have to do this." Man Bao nodded. Mrs. Fang asked, "Don't you want to put a seal on it?" "Where's the seal?" Man Bao then dug out his private and official seals, and stamped them on the left and the right. The 2 posts were stamped the same, and then handed one of them to Zhou Lejun, saying, "They are all monthly salary, then most of the time I'm still in the palace, so remember to get your salary every month from now on." Zhou Lejun took the post and nodded. Man Bao received another one, and planned to take it into the palace the next day, and on the 3rd day of the 3rd day of the new year, he went to the Ministry of Household for registration. At this time, Lu Huan, who had just returned home, happened to meet Lu Shangshu, who was drinking tea with someone, and was frowning, not knowing what he was thinking. He remembered Zhou Man's advice, and immediately caught up to salute, "Grandfather, you're back." Lu Shangshu turned his head and glanced at his little grandson, and asked with a sigh, "Are you back too?" But without waiting for Lu Huan to answer, he continued to the study with his hands behind his back. Lu Huan followed his s, "Grandfather, I have something to tell you." Lu Shangshu reluctantly pulled out a trace of his mind, and said with a perfunctory hum, "Go ahead." "Grandfather, Zhou Man is going to send a message to the Ministry of Housing the day after tomorrow. Can you send someone to wait for her in the afternoon? She is afraid that she will be late from the Daming Palace, and the people from the Ministry of Household will be sent to the government office." Lu Shangshu was half-hearted and asked, "What message did she send to the Ministry of Housing?" "It's just a post about getting a salary. She should get a salary this month." Lu Shangshu, the head of the Ministry of Finance, how could he pay attention to the salary of a 5th and 6th rank junior official? He was silent for a while and then asked, "Just for this?" Lu Huan looked at his grandfather's dark face, and nodded inexplicably, "Yes, it's fine for grandfather to talk to his uncles and uncles, right?" Lu Shangshu couldn't help but reach out and pat him on the head. "Do I need to order this kind of thing? The day after tomorrow, won't I wait another day? I won't die if I receive a salary in a few days, Shenzhu's relief money it will be a few days later." Lu Huan, who suffered from the fire of insolence. With tears in Lu Huan's eyes, he turned around and ran away. "I want to tell my grandmother, grandfather, You took anger at me at work. Lu Shangshu stretched out his hand to catch him, but the boy ran away with a smack, very nimble. Lu Shangshu. On the third day of the junior high school, Lu Shangshu still wandered around the Ministry of Households, and then he grabbed a clerk and said to him, "Take care today, Zhou Manlai from Kongwengan and Taiyuan Hospital handed in the post and seal, remember to put archive her posts and seals, don't miss out on the salary." The clerk hurriedly responded respectfully, thinking that Zhou Man was really favored this week, that they even had to specifically warn them about such a trivial matter as their official book. "Man Bao, I finally got my salary. See you at 10 at night." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1536. As soon as Lu Shangshu walked away with his hands behind his back, the clerk began to look through Zhou Man's file, and Tate put it at hand, so that as soon as she sent the post, he could enter the file here. It is fast and efficient. I believe it must be able to win the favor of the other party. He began to look forward to the arrival of the favored imperial physician. Lu Shangshu and the clerk did not know that Man Bao was stumped in the Daming Palace at this time. Because he was worried about going into the file to receive a salary, Man Bao refused to play with Princess Mingda, Princess Changjiao, but went back to the East Palace after getting the pulse of the Crown Princess. Come and invite her in person. Mingda and Chang Yu, who were feeling a little sorry that they couldn't feel sorry together, immediately went to see the Queen with Man Bao in the bedroom of the main hall. Because Mingda and the others only had breakfast with the Queen in the morning, they knew that the Queen looked very good, so Aunt Chang definitely didn't come to invite Man Bao to see a doctor. On the way, Mingda asked Aunt Chang directly, "What does the Queen Mother call Man Bao?" Aunt Chang smiled and said, "The princesses will know when they go." Everyone knew from the look on her face that it wouldn't be a bad thing, so even Man Bao relaxed. Entering the main hall, the Queen is reviewing the book, of course, the book of the harem. Even if she lives in the Daming Palace, the palace affairs also need her to handle. Besides, in addition to the affairs in the palace, there are also some affairs of the wife that she needs to deal with. If the average housewife wants to maintain the stability of the back house, and the clan wife wants to maintain the stability of the clan's backyard, then the Queen must not only maintain the overall stability of the royal clan's backyard, but also maintain the stability of the entire court minister's backyard to assist the emperor's management. Good for the whole court and the world. So she has a lot of things to do. Seeing Man Bao and her two daughters coming together, she put down the booklet in her hand, waved to them, and asked Man Bao, "You see how different I am today?" Man Bao looked at the Queen seriously, and after a while, he said unsurely, "The lady doesn't look much different from before, and even her face is much better than before, it doesn't look like she is sick." The Queen smiled and said with Aunt Chang, "It can be seen that he is really a doctor, and he only thinks about illness." She stretched out her hand and touched her face and smiled, "My face is indeed quite rosy, but it's not because of taking medicine. Do you see my hand?" Man Bao stared at her hand, staring for a long time without seeing any difference. Seeing Man Bao looking at her blankly, the Queen burst out laughing. Aunt Chang on the side had already poured tea for the three little girls. She smiled and said, "Master Zhou Xiao, did you forget the ointment you made 2 days ago? Oh, by the way, you call it moisturizing rouge." Man Bao's eyes widened slightly, and he couldn't help but reach out and touch the back of the Queen's hand, feeling moist. She couldn't help but feel her pulse, and gently touched the place where she used to feel it, carefully. After feeling it for a while, I felt that the skin was not only moister than the previous consultation, but also seemed to be more elastic. Seeing her expression, the Queen knew that she understood. She took back her hand and let her and Mingda Changjiao sit beside her, and asked with a smile, "That ointment, okay, moisturizing rouge, Where did you get that recipe? Manbao was a little embarrassed and said, I found it in the library. The queen didn't know much about this either, so she asked curiously, is the recipe called Run Rouge? Manbao's face was a little weird, he hesitated for a while and then said, yes or no. Chang Yu asked curiously, yes, yes, no, no, and yes and no. Manbao's face is inexhaustible, oh, how can I say this? Do you want to tell them that the doctor who wrote this recipe has some research on skin diseases, but other doctors look down on him, but he really feels that skin diseases are also very important, so he is a little depressed. Later, he went to study other diseases, and he was barely famous. When he wrote medical books, he couldn't help but write a supplementary volume, which was printed together with the main volume. Among them, in the supplementary book, he satirized those who had looked down on him and his formulas, and finally joked that those people looked down on him, but because the color of him and his wife was better than that of them and their wife. Obviously they are the same age, but he just makes him and his wife look 10 years younger than them. They look down on the various ointments he makes, but they don't know that his ointment is more colorful than the rouge on the market. And people live, one is for life, and the other is for appearance. He and his wife can live beautifully, and this medical skill is stronger than all of them, so he teased his recipe called Run Rouge, which means that it is more beautiful than rouge. Of course, it's actually called Beijijao, and moisturizing rouge is just a joke, and Manbao thought that his supplementary volume was very interesting, especially when he scolded those doctors. She was very interested, so she specially wrote down this recipe. Son, I took it out to play with Mingda Changjiao and the others, just to see if this moisturizing rouge can really cure chapped and make people's skin moist and bright. So Manbao said that the name is true or not. If there are only two little friends, then of course she can brag as much as she wants, anyway, everyone will laugh and laugh afterward. But when the queen asked her, she couldn't answer truthfully. So Manbao chirped and talked about the thin medical book. Chang Yu couldn't help but ask, so he and his wife are 10 years younger than ordinary people with this ointment? Manbao said, of course not. I have read another medical classic written by him. He is very good at conditioning methods. There are not only external principles, but also internal adjustments. There is a lot of knowledge in it. Chang Yu's eyes were bright, and even the queen couldn't help but ask, have you learned it? Manbao shook his head, I just read the medical classics, but I didn't delve into this aspect. Chang Yu asked, then why are you reading that medical scripture? I was looking for a recipe for regulating the liver, and I found it along the way, Manbao said. I only temporarily studied the recipe for regulating the liver recorded in his book, and I didn't study the others. She also has no time to study. Mingda's focus was different from that of ordinary people. She asked curiously, listening to his tone, this doctor is also a powerful person, so how did the medical books he wrote end up in the library? Shouldn't this kind of medical book be used for family heirlooms? Manbao said, I only know that he is from Liang, and I don't know the rest. Studying a person's life is what historians do. However, he is a doctor, and he is not famous enough for historians to study his life. Therefore, his name will be passed on to his descendants in the future, or he will not be someone knows his life. See you tomorrow, May 1st is coming soon. Although I can't go out to play, I'm still happy. I'm happy every day. You should be happy too. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1537. She can still know that he is from Liang because he wrote it in the supplementary volume, but the supplementary volume is not very popular in the Taiyuan hospital, because the recipes recorded in it are like Beiji paste, only it can cure very small skin diseases, and some medicines are too precious to be practical for imperial physicians. So after a few generations, if the sub-volume is lost, I am afraid that even he will not know where he is. Thinking like this, Man Bao secretly decided that she must write a biography for herself in the future. Even if historians can't record her in the history, she can write more biographies, and she can pass it on herself. The queen didn't know that Man Bao was thinking about keeping her name at the moment. She gently slid the back of her hand and asked with a smile, "Can you make this ointment again? I think it's very useful." "Yes, yes, but Man Bao, who has done it once, doesn't want to do it a second time." If the queen had asked her 2 days ago, in order to get the second sister-in-law and the third sister-in-law together to get ointment, she would definitely agree, but she has studied the ointment for acne in the past 2 days, and now she wants to make a new ointment. So she said, "Niang Niang, I'm currently researching another recipe of his, which also has moisturizing effects. Would you like to try it?" "Oh," the queen asked, "is there any difference with this recipe?" "This recipe is mainly to prevent dryness and chapped, and it can also whiten one or two, while the new recipe is to remove acne." Man Bao's eyes swept across Mingda and Chang Yu's smooth faces, and then said, "Acne is mostly found on men's faces. Maybe the fifth prince will need them in the future." Crowd. The queen saw Man Bao's eagerness to try, and probably guessed why she didn't want to make this ointment again, so she nodded with a smile. "Then you try to make this ointment for acne first, but since it's all boiled ointment, why don't you make this ointment again?" Man Bao immediately responded, extremely happy. Mingda and Chang Yu were very interested in the doctor and the ointment, and volunteered to help. The queen only thought they were going to play, and didn't stop them. She smiled and said, "But don't delay your homework." Mingda immediately said, "Don't worry, mother, we only went to play after class in the morning." Mingda and Chang Yu were both 10-year-old princesses, and naturally they had to learn, but because the emperor favored them and the summer was sweltering, they only had classes in the morning, and they were allowed to play freely at noon and in the afternoon. And it was just such a coincidence that every time Man Bao came to see the crown princess, it was noon and afternoon, so the three of them could always get together. After coming out of the queen, Man Bao immediately wrote down the formula he had researched and improved, and handed it over to the palace servants to ask them to go to the imperial hospital to get the medicine. Because of the queen's words, the Taiyuan hospital got 2 prescriptions, among which the 3 herbs were quite expensive, and they could only capture them to the palace servants, but couldn't help but muttered in their hearts, "What the hell is Master Zhou Xiao doing? A messy recipe?" When the palace servants brought back a large package of medicinal materials, they also went to the Shangxi bureau to get the honey that Zhou Man wanted. This is a valuable thing, and there are not many in the palace. After all, wild honey is difficult to collect, and it is one of the valuable ingredients in the ingredients that the honey collectors need to take risks to collect. While playing with these medicinal materials, Man Bao said to Mingda Changjiao, "This doctor must be a very rich and wealthy person." Mingda nodded, "Ordinary people can't afford this herb. There are also pearls. Although the pearls are a little ugly, they are still very precious when they are crushed and used as medicinal materials." Man Bao began to weigh the herbs and distributed them one by one. Mingda and Chang Yu had already moved their hands once, and the second time they felt a little more skilled. They excitedly moved a stool and sat on the side to grind the herbs. The maids spread out the paper for them to hold the herbs without interfering. Man Bao decided to change the steps today, do all the preparatory work first, and then cook it together tomorrow. The 3 of them had a great time playing, and when Man Bao left the Daming Palace and saw the post in the medicine box, he remembered the salary. She looked at the time in the system and was anxious, carrying the medicine box, and ran to the East Palace. She hurriedly put down the medicine box in her hand, found the post and the fake note she took with Kong Jiju this morning, and hurriedly ran towards the imperial city. The prince came out of Zhenji mansion, stretched his waist, and was about to return to the West mansion when he saw Zhou Man running past the side door and headed straight for the East Palace gate. The prince paused, frowned, and asked, "Go and ask, what happened?" Eunuch Wu hurried to ask, but no one knew. In the end, he could only run to the Changguan Hall in sweat, find Bai Shan who was doing his homework, and asked, "Little Master Bai, the Crown Prince just saw Lord Josiah running out, but what happened to the East Palace?" Bai Shan held the hand of the pen for a while, and quickly got up and saluted and apologized. "Zhou Man and Kong Jiju asked for leave this morning, and they were going to the Ministry of Housing to do business, but I didn't expect to go to the Daming Palace today to see the Crown Princess come back. It's a little late, it's too late now. She should be anxious that she won't be able to get in touch with the official affairs of the Ministry of Household." When Eunuch Wu heard this, he breathed a sigh of relief. It would be good if there was something wrong with the Crown Princess and the palace. But he still whispered, "I also ask young Master Bai to persuade Lord Josiah. You can walk quickly in this palace, but you can't run. If you collide with the nobles, it will be a big sin. Even if you don't collide with the nobles, it is quite disturbing to look at, especially for a doctor like Zhou Man. As soon as he runs, it makes people feel that something is wrong." Bai Shan quickly got up and responded, apologetically sent Eunuch Wu out of the Changguan pavilion, and put a purse in his hand. "I also asked Eunuch Wu to plead guilty in front of the prince on behalf of Zhou Man. It is a sin to disturb the prince." Eunuch Wu responded with a smile and took his purse. Bai Shan breathed a sigh of relief in his heart, knowing that this matter was over. When Eunuch Wu was gone, Yin Or, who was on duty with him today, came forward curiously and asked, "Man Bao came here just now. Why didn't I see it?" Bai Shan exhaled and said, "I haven't been here before." Yin Or, "Then how do you know why she is late?" "I don't know, I guess," Bai Shan said. "Anyway, no matter what the reason is, there's nothing wrong with mentioning the Crown Princess. And she must have been in Daming Palace for too long. It was too late, otherwise if she went back to Changguan Museum, she would not have come here, and she would not have forgotten about her salary." Bai Shan frowned. When she came back, she had to be careful in the future. No matter how anxious she was, she couldn't run away. Man Bao went out of the palace city with the note of Confucius offering wine and went directly to Shangshu. The Ministry of Household is located in the Zhuoyuaner of Shangshu province. When Man Bao went, most of the officials had left, and a small number of people were working overtime automatically or passively. Man Bao found the Ministry of Household and waited for her clerk to see her, and immediately got up to meet her. God, he thought she was not coming, and almost left. What about Shenxi? The unitary time is over now. The last day to ask for a monthly pass. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1538. Man Bao ran all the way, and was still a little out of breath. When he saw the clerk, he hurriedly saluted and apologized, saying that he had missed the appointment. The clerk was still a little angry in his heart. Even though Zhou Man was favored, his rank was higher than him, and he was taken care of by his top boss, he still felt angry. But now, seeing Zhou Man bowing to the end, her anger disappeared. She was a 5th-rank official, but she was so much higher than his 8th-rank clerk. Such a humble and sincere apology, it is naturally, forgive. No matter how many thoughts flashed through his mind, the clerk returned the salute with a smile on his face anyway, indicating that he didn't wait long and didn't mind at all. Then lead Man Bao into the public room to go through the formalities. After seeing Man Bao's post, he also praised Man Bao's post for being gorgeous and valuable. The writing is also good, and the seal is also very good. Of course, this is impossible. Yesterday, she heard Bai Shan say it, and heard that the official posts used gold skin directly, but it was shiny. After the clerk reviewed her post, she began to file her and asked her to fill in a lot of information. The procedures were done very quickly, but no matter how fast, it took about a quarter of an hour to sign so many documents and check the salary that should have been issued. Man Bao was relieved a lot, and the clerk also let go and gave her entering the file. He smiled and said, If Lord Zhou Xiao is busy, you can let someone pass the word. It will be the same when you come back tomorrow. Whenever the lower official has received Lu Shangshu's advice, he will wait for you. Man Bao listened very embarrassedly and said, "It's not good to let you wait for an hour in vain. Today is busy, and tomorrow may not be able to come on time." The clerk asked curiously, "Is the East Palace very busy?" He immediately realized that what he asked was not good, and immediately explained, "I just saw that Lord Zhou Xiao seems to be very busy." Man Bao smiled and said, "It's not the East Palace, it's the Empress who ordered something, so it's a bit late." The clerk nodded with a smile, and didn't ask any further questions. Of course, he felt that no matter how much he asked Zhou Man, he wouldn't say anything, so he still had to be funny. The clerk who knew Kair once again said that he should wait for Zhou Man, and Lord Zhou Xiao didn't need to feel uneasy, and comforted her very much. The clerk closed the file, and Man Bao smiled respectfully. "The file has been entered, and the family members of Zhou Xiao Sama can get their salary if they come with the same post." Man Bao said excitedly, "They will come tomorrow." Clerk, "Actually, there is no need to be so urgent." But after glancing at Zhou Man, whose face was full of excitement, the clerk silently swallowed the words back. Forget it. No matter how much the favored minister was, she was only a teenage girl, and he was very excited when he first received his salary. However, it seems that tomorrow will be an early notification to the colleagues who pay the salary to prepare the full salary for the week. There are not many officials in Dajin, so the salary is still very rich. In addition to money, there is also cloth, which Lumi can receive. If the weather is too hot, you can occasionally receive ice cubes above the 5th rank of the Beijing official. Although it is not much, it is not only honorable, but also worth a lot of money. Zhou Man happened to step on this line. However, this year, the household department is a bit difficult. The clerk thinks that he heard the comments of his colleagues today, and thinks that the ice of the adults will be gone this year. Man Bao finished his work and left happily. It was only now that the orange sunset appeared in the sky, and she walked slowly along the wall of the imperial city to the palace gate. Only now did she feel that she ran too hard just now, and her legs seemed to be a little sore. Not only was my leg sore, but my stomach was a little sore. Man Bao felt it carefully, and finally made a diagnosis for himself: hungry. She looked up at the sunset on the horizon, touched her stomach and said to herself, "Today not only exhausted my brain but also my body, and I forgot to eat snacks in the afternoon, no wonder I'm so hungry." Man Bao walked back to the East Palace and was about to go back to the Changguan Pavilion when he saw Bai Shan, who was waiting at the gate of the East Palace. She took 2 quick steps and asked, "Why are you here?" Bai Shan, who was about to teach her a lesson, saw that she was walking in a wrong way, then frowned and asked, "What's wrong with your feet?" Man Bao sighed, "My feet are all right, but my legs seem to be strained. I ran too fast just now." Bai Shan was a little anxious. "Why are you so careless? You are still a doctor." Man Bao said, "People have been waiting for me for over an hour." Bai Shan understands what she means. It's not good for people to wait for a long time or in vain. He swallowed the words he wanted to talk about her. He crouched down in front of her. "I'll carry you." Man Bao's eyes lit up, and while lying on his back, he said, "It's not good, I can still walk." Bai Shan rolled his eyes with his back to Man Bao, and muttered in his heart, "Then you shouldn't get up." Bai Shan directly carried her on his back and asked, "Xiao Yuanzheng and the others are all gone now, what do you do? Do you want someone to go to the imperial hospital and ask an imperial doctor to come and have a look?" Man Bao leaned on his back and said happily, "No, I have the ointment. I'll wipe it after I eat after a while, and then I'll sleep for another night." Bai Shan weighed her up, made sure she didn't feel pain, then reluctantly believed her words, lowered his voice and said to her, "Although Su you can't be trusted, you can still ask her to help with things like rubbing medicine. Yes, it will be more convenient for you. Man Bao nodded again and realized that he couldn't see, so he responded. Hearing the joy in her voice, Bai Shan couldn't help but smile and walk down the long corridor with her back. There were almost no people on the road at the moment. Even when they met the palace servant and the servant, they were not afraid, because the palace regulations did not prohibit people from being behind. As long as they don't run, they don't panic. Bai Shan carried Man Bao all the way back to his residence, but he didn't even breathe. He has been practicing martial arts and boxing with Daji in the past few years, and he also eats a lot, so he has more strength than Man Bao. The two of them are obviously a year apart. When they were young, they were almost the same height. When Man Bao grew the fastest, when he was 7 or 8 years old, he was once the same size as Bai Shan, but in the past 2 years, Bai Shan has grown taller, and Man Bao has grown slower. Unconsciously, people who were beaten by Man Bao in the past can walk around the East Palace behind her back. When Man Bao was put on the bed, he was both happy and sad. It's been half a year, and I've only grown so much. Bai Shan reached out and touched her head and said, "It's good for you to grow slowly, and your legs don't hurt." He said, "Bai and I are growing fast. Recently, we have felt sore in our legs when we sleep at night, and sometimes we have cramps." Man Bao never knew this, so he quickly took his hand. "Let me show you." Bai Shan showed her the pulse in a generous manner, and dragged a small stool over to sit on it for her convenience. Man Bao touched his pulse and said, "No problem, it seems that it is indeed because it grows too fast." Next update around 4 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1539. Man Bao felt a little envious in his heart. This is because the food can't keep up. Should you eat more eggs and meat, or should we pay the Food Bureau to add more vegetables to you? Bai Shan hesitated. Is this bad? Man Bao immediately said, "What's wrong? Being able to grow is a good thing. I think it's not enough to grow taller." Bai Shan smiled and said, "Don't compare with us, you are not short. I think you and Suyu are almost the same height when they stand together. She is several years older than you, and she will definitely be taller than you in the future. She's tall. Just because she grew up among boys, she can't compare her height with them, right?" Man Bao was not very happy, because Suyu was not very tall among the palace maids she had seen. Man Bao started to think, wondering if her mother was tall or not. Next time she got home, she had to ask her mother. She would definitely know. When the two were talking, Suyu brought the food box and came in. Seeing Bai Shan sitting in front of the bed, he was stunned for a moment. He quickly looked away, bowed his head and bowed, "I don't know that you have guests." After saying that, he was about to leave, with a look of no evil. Bai Shan hurriedly stopped her and said, "Lord Zhou Xiao's leg is injured. You go and fetch water to wash her and then give her medicine." Man Bao, who is no longer in pain. She hesitated for a moment, thinking that Bai Shan had just carried her back after all, so she closed her mouth and said nothing. Bai Shan got up and said goodbye to her. "You take the medicine before you eat? Do you want me to go to the bookstore to help you get your book back?" Man Bao nodded again and again. She did have to fix the book in a while. Bai Shan went. Suyu turned sideways to make way, and when he was gone, he hurried forward to look at Man Bao. "Why is Zhou Xiao-sama injured?" Man Bao said, "Running too fast." Suyu. Suyu went to get hot water, and when he was going to help her to wash, Man Bao pushed her hand away and went by himself. She smiled, "Don't worry, it doesn't hurt much anymore." Suyu saw that although her walking speed was a little slow, but there was not much pain on her face. She knew that it was not very important, and she was silent for a while thinking about whether she was watching the night. In my heart, I felt that Bai Shan was making too much of a fuss. Man Bao took a bath, washed his face and applied the medicine himself, without asking Suyu to help. Ever since he knew that Suyu always likes to stare at her, Man Bao asked Keek to help him stare at her. Because it was related to the safety of the host and the people were not far away, Keek gave her a discount and only charged her. At that time, I was staring at the prince's half of the points. But after staring for several days, not to mention Manbao, even Keek didn't see anything wrong, except that she always liked to peep at Manbao from time to time. One person has not found any problems with the people she is in contact with, and she has not said anything against Manbao. Not to mention the full treasure, even Keek felt that this point was spent a bit unfairly, although it was the one who earned the points. In the end, Manbao simply stopped staring at it. Isn't it bad to buy books with points? Although she stopped staring at Suyu, Manbao was still very careful. She knew that this room in the palace was not very safe. Not only Suyu, but also other female officials or palace maids could come in if they wanted to. So when she sees things that don't belong to this world, she will close the door, and Keek is watching. As long as someone approaches, she will stuff things into the system. No problem so far. But Manbao still didn't want to let someone who was not sure of friend or foe get close, even if Bai Shan said that Suyu didn't have the guts to play tricks in front of her doctor. Anyway, it doesn't hurt much, just rub the medicine on your own and it will be fine. Manbao wiped the medicine and started to eat. After Suyu put away the food box, Bai Shan and Bai Erlang brought her things over together. She needed a lot of materials for her book repair. In the last month, she searched for a lot of materials, and they were all piled up on the table. Bai Shan simply brought them all over for her. There are also paper and pen and ink provided by Chongquen Museum. After entering the Chongquen Museum, the paper and pen and ink used by Manbao did not cost any money, all of which were provided by the East Palace. Bai Erlang helped put things on the desk, looked Manbao up and down and asked Bai Shan, "Where is she injured? Why can't I see it?" Before Bai Shan could speak, Manbao had already said, "Let you see it, then you are a doctor." Bai Erlang frowned, and asked with some concern, "It won't be really hurt, will it?" Manbao sat on the desk slowly, nodded and said, "Of course it's true, I just wiped the medicine, didn't you smell it?" Bai Erlang shrugged his nose, really smelled a faint medicinal smell, and asked worriedly, "Why is it hurt?" Bai Shan also smelled it, so he simply went to the stove and lifted the teapot to pour water for her. "Do you want to ask for leave tomorrow?" Manbao shook his head, "No, just sleep for one night. I'll ask my second apprentice to give me a few needles tomorrow." When Bai Erlang saw that she had poured the water, he began to study the ink. He looked like he was going to work, and he felt a little sympathetic. "You are injured and you still need to work." Manbao's eyes lit up, and his tone was agitated, and he said regretful words, "I just checked with the Ministry of Household on my salary, the salary of the Emperor, and the loyalty to the Emperor. I have taken so much money, and it is not good not to work." Ah! Bai Shan and Bai Erlang didn't hear the regret in her words, they only heard her excitement and couldn't help asking, "Is there a lot of salary?" Manbao seemed to be lit up all over his body, just as bright as an oil lamp suddenly raised at night. The whole person was excited, but restrained. "You must not know, how much salary can I have?" Bai Shan and Bai Erlang really don't know, they haven't understood this. The main thing is that Mr. Zhuang will never tempt them with bribes. If he is an official for salary, then why should he be an official? Whether it is Bai Shan or Bai Erlang, the family has a lot of money and a lot of fields, so money is not so attractive to them. They are just a little frugal every day, not how much they crave money. Moreover, Mr. Zhuang also doesn't want them to have a desire for money, so those who cultivate it are corrupt officials, right? So Mr. Zhuang never told them how much officials at all levels were paid. He didn't say it, let alone Mrs. Lu and Master Bai, they let Bai Shan and Bai Er to study, not for that little salary, okay. For the sake of honoring the ancestors, for the legacy of the ancestors. But at this moment, this layer of film was pierced by Man Bao, and she looked at them with bright eyes and said, I am a 5th grade editor, and the monthly salary is 3,600 yuan, and the 6th grade imperial doctor's monthly salary is 2 yuan. $1,400. Bai Shan asked, that's about the same as what you earn from sitting in Ji Shitang. You still have 5 taels of silver every month in Ji Shitang, not counting your income from medical visits. Now that Man Baoran is in the palace, there is no income from medical visits. Man Bao's eyes lit up and said, but it's just stipends. In addition to stipends, there are also silk, cloth, cotton, and rice every season. The 5th grade compilation is 15 stones per month, and the 6th grade imperial doctor is monthly. Baishi, the most important thing is that I still have a job field. Although it has not been issued yet, it will be approved after the autumn harvest. However, I have 600 acres of job fields for my 5th grade compilation, and my 6th grade imperial doctor has a job field for 400 acres. Next update around 8 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1540. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang were stunned, and after a while, they found their voice, is it a wasteland? Man Bao shook his head again and again, and said with joy, no, it's Guantian. It was allocated from Guantian. My share is in Yangzhou. There are a number of officials in Dajin. Those who retire, suddenly do not want to be an official and leave their jobs, are imprisoned or seized for breaking the law, or are sent to the outside world. Land ownership belongs to the state, officials only have the right to use it, and the output belongs to the individual. Therefore, Man Bao does not have to worry about no land points. The officials in Beijing were dissatisfied with the staff, and often one person served as 1.5 envoys. Last year, the king of Yizhu revolted and slapped a lot of officials. Now one person serves as 2 envoys, so there is no shortage of jobs. Moreover, the job field is only assigned to the regular position, and there is no job field for a virtual position. Otherwise, Man Bao will not be able to get the job field in Yangzhou. It is estimated that he will be assigned to Shangzhou, Longzhou, or even Liangzhou. Of course, a large part of the fact that the clerk can tell her that she can be assigned to a job field in Yangzhou is because she is very favored now. She is not only favored by the East Palace, but also favored by the Empress and Empress. Seeing how she runs to Daming Palace every day, as well as the attitude that their ministers personally told him to put her in the file, the clerk specially chose a good position for her in the official field. Of course, Man Bao didn't know that there were so many tricks in the allocation of jobs and fields, and Lu Shangshu didn't expect his words to affect Zhou Man. At this moment, Lu Shangshu was having a headache for the treasury, while Man Bao was excited about the newly approved salary. After she was excited, she felt that she had taken so much money from others. If she didn't work hard, she would be so sorry for these 2 salaries. So Man Bao is now excited and full of enthusiasm for his work. She looked at the 2 little friends with sparkling eyes and said, you all have to work hard, graduate as soon as possible, pass the Jinshi examination as soon as possible, pass the official examination as soon as possible, and become an official and get a salary as soon as possible. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang, who only had 100 acres of land and were still a partnership of 3 people, came back to their senses and asked, so many farms? Man Bao nodded and said yearningly, Kong Jiju is amazing. He has several jobs, and there are 28 hectares of farmland alone. That was when he knew that his 2 land parcels were 10 hectares in total, and he couldn't help asking the clerk. I also asked the clerk, the husband's land is 200 acres, I asked the clerk to let him try his best to put Mr. S land next to me so we can still take care of each other. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang couldn't help but said, Your Majesty is really rich. Man Bao nodded again, and then whispered, I think what I did last time was really wrong. I will go to Daming Palace tomorrow and have to admit my mistake to your Majesty. Bai Shan looked at her inexplicably and asked, Then next time, he will keep you out of the medical case. Man Bao said, Those with minor illnesses and minor pains still have to follow the rules. If they are seriously ill and in pain, they will naturally listen to him. The emperor's serious illness will involve the change of the dynasty, of course, the emperor has to listen to it. So she meant it, mistaken it, but she still had to do what she did in the future. Bai Erlang felt that this was very bad, then you might as well not admit your mistake. Man Bao, that's not good. After receiving such a big benefit from others, it is still popular. If my father knows about it, he will blame me. Bai Shan finally recovered from the impact of the job field, and said, This field belongs to the world. You can't think that it was given to you by His Majesty. You have to think that it was given to you by the people of the world. Man Bao tilted his head for a while and asked, The salaries and lumi are indeed provided by the people, but Tian is not, it was given to me by your Majesty. Why not? These fields are all created by people, and the official fields have always been enslaved and cultivated. Bai Shan thought for a while and said, You are right in thinking so, it is indeed given by your Majesty, but you have to add it after your Majesty. A commoner. Man Bao looked at him curiously, Why is it so clear? Bai Shan said with a serious face, It's better to distinguish clearly, so that you don't think about the emperor in the future, and you will do wrong things. Man Bao said with certainty, I won't do anything wrong. Bai Shan said, One thing, your original intention is to go left, and going left is more beneficial to the people, but your Majesty told you to go right, so do you want to go left or right? Man Bao firmly said, Of course, go to the left. Bai Shan, if you go to the right, will your Majesty give you 20 hectares of land? Man Bao said, Left. 30 hectares. Man Bao said without hesitation, Let's go left. Then what if the 30 hectares of land were awarded to you, instead of a job field, could it be a Yanjai field? Man Bao hesitated for a moment, Let's go. What if it was 50 hectares? Man Bao, that's a big deal. An official as big as Kong Jiju only has 28 hectares. Don't worry about anything, you only say whether there will be an exchange of interests, when the interests of His Majesty are large enough for you. Man Bao was silent for a longer time this time, and after a while, he said, Why does your Majesty stand on the opposite side of the common people for a major event that requires 50 hectares of land to be exchanged? Bai Shan blinked. Man Bao pointed his finger and said, Then if I oppose it with all my might, will His Majesty chop me? Bai Shan frightened her and said, Yes. Man Bao pondered for a while and said, Then I resign. Seeing that she was not dazzled by the job field, and that Bai Shan knew how to think rationally, he nodded approvingly, Okay, I'll say goodbye to you then. Bai Erlang, who was beside him, was sour and couldn't help muttering, I don't know if I can pass the test. Bai Shan directly ignored his words and said to Man Bao, Okay, you're busy, pay attention to rest at night, if you don't get enough sleep, you won't grow taller. Man Bao, who was planning to stay up all night for the emperor at night, decided in an instant whether to go to bed on time or not to revise the book tomorrow. After all, the official Man Bao was given by the emperor and the prince, especially the prince, so when Man Bao was going to Daming Palace the next day, he deliberately went to Zhenshifu. This morning, the prince had already taken a class on Confucius wine sacrifice, and he was dealing with official business at this time. Man Bao was not familiar with the officials of Zhenshifu, but she came in fairly smoothly, although everyone looked serious and seemed a little dissatisfied with her presence here. But after all, She had meritorious service in the East Palace, so everyone reluctantly nodded to her and showed her the way. Manbao looked at the officials of the East Palace and secretly said, "Your Majesty's adults are very interesting, how can they be so rigid to the prince's adults? It doesn't look friendly at all." When Eunuch Wu saw her, he immediately went in and asked the prince to report, and soon came out and led Manbao in. The prince was waiting at the desk to write a letter. When he heard the movement, he looked up at her and asked, "Why are you here?" Thinking of what he saw last night, he stopped writing and asked, "Is something wrong with the crown princess?" "No." Manbao took out a package from the medicine box and gave it to the prince, and said with a smile, "This is the summer heat tea I made, and I will cook it for you, your highness. Ask for a monthly ticket."